Hello, everyone. Today I'm joined by Douglas Freeman, the founder of the Entertainment Football Association. How are you doing today, Mr. Freeman?
Very well, Tony. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for asking.
Great.
Yeah. So please tell us about the Entertainment Football Association. What is it?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you to all the listeners. The Entertainment Football Association is an exciting fusion of the natural trends of bringing together the greatness of sports in the form of pro indoor football, along with the excitement of headline concerts. We also bring in fashion, technology, the arts, culture to communities oftentimes that don't have the opportunity to have these great sports and entertainment experiences. There are about 300 metropolitan areas across the United States with at least 150,000 people, and they don't often get these great moments. And they're often described as sports entertainment deserts. So we want to fill that gap and provide wonderful, wonderful communities with great opportunities in the summertime. Typically, our league is run from May through into July plus playoffs.
Interesting. And what is the inspiration behind the company?
Yeah, it starts with your passion. My passion is sports, and I love football, and I want to find a way with some of my colleagues who are equally passionate around sport. Is a way to get into this. Can we do this from the business side? And we'll talk about backgrounds. I've been a businessman in the management consulting arena for almost 3 decades, but I wanted to apply some of the skills I'd learned to the business of sport and the excitement of sport. So a few years back, hired a sports broker and came across a team in Texas. And it was exciting not only because it's indoor football and it's pro sport, but also this person had found a model by which to make the team profitable and had done so over multiple years. And of course, as a business person, you're looking for profit models, cash flowing business models. We visited this location, a town of about 300,000 or so, in an arena of about 4,800. And it was a Saturday night. And if you haven't seen indoor football, it's very exciting. And there are about 3,000 people. It's very intimate. And the DJ is storming, and you have these WWE, fireworks things indoors and flatbed trucks going out with ball boys and ball girls throwing mini footballs. It was just an exciting way to start. And then you see the players and they're extraordinary human beings from the top schools. We saw players that day from everyone from Alabama to Michigan to USC and Oregon and others. So the player quality is outstanding. The field is shrunken down. So you have a very fast, high scoring game. I think our score was something like 63 to 50 something, maybe 54. So that was the inspiration, passion, and then seeing the opportunity of this one team, and that begins the story.
Uh, so what is the business model behind each league?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that, business is a game that requires a lot of time, energy, effort, a lot of data, a lot of number crunching, and carrying on from that story, the excitement of that experience. Unfortunately, the numbers didn't match up, so we didn't purchase at the time. It was in 2019 and 2020, COVID hit. And then in 2022, we launched a pilot league. We did 4 teams in Texas and two in outside in Wichita, Kansas, and Mississippi. And so, to the business model, there are a lot of lessons learned. That's why you pilot in business to get lessons learned. The number one lesson learned for the business model is for smaller sports that don't have major media rights deal, it's far better to, we believe, centralize the league. So have a league that is controlled by one entity, all teams controlled initially by the league, so that when you roll out the teams, the quality levels are high, the leadership levels are high, the player and coaching, everything is at the highest standards. And so you don't have concerns of inequality because we saw lots of differences in terms of the quality of the rollout from one location to the other. Centralization enables high quality rollouts so that all fans at all locations have the best possible sporting experience. The second piece around that is location. we've decided to roll out in one region close to us, and that's the Northeast. So location is important because, you want ready access. When we're in Texas, it's a lot harder to gain access, not just for ourselves, but our vendors and sponsor partners as well. And then the really the next major piece is around the number of teams. You want a manageable number of teams, and we've chosen 4 teams as that number. And then the probably final big thing is busable distances. You want teams and clusters that are easy to get to, 2 to 4 hours travel time. That eliminates massive costs around travels. There are competitor leagues where just this past weekend, one competitor league was flying a team all the way from, I think, Montana to to get out to the east, and it's very expensive. These long haul type setups when you don't have a regional and short distance busable distance cluster.
You mentioned what it takes to create a successful league. You yourself are a pretty successful entrepreneur. If you don't mind sharing some of your past entrepreneurial endeavors and how they
Sure.
translate into creating a successful venture in this particular instance.
Right. Well, thank you. I started out like many right after college. I went to college on the West Coast, UC Berkeley. I came to New York. I worked for Booz Allen Hamilton Consulting spinoff organization focused on the utilities practice, and got my feet wet as a heavy duty number crunchers and utilities benchmarking. Then I moved to Wall Street to what's now JP Morgan Chase. It was Chase Securities, and I worked in turnarounds, and that got me my financial chops. Then I went to grad school. I got a master in public policy from Harvard's Government School, the Kennedy School of Government. Came back, I worked at Deloitte Consulting and telecom media, and then right after worked for my friend's internet company as one of the 4 founding managers. And that's sort of where my entrepreneurial story begins. As many of you are aware and seen the stats, it's very hard to build a strong startup. Only about 1% of startups make it to 7 figures in revenue. When I was with that founding management team, we built it up to 7 figures in revenue, and we sold it for close to $400 million. So that was my first taste of entrepreneurship. Now, fortunately, my friends retired and the rest of us are still working. But it was a phenomenal first entrepreneurial venture. Then I built my own boutique management consulting firm a few years later, and I built that from 0 to 7 figures in 3 years. And that was my second time. So yet another startup. Currently, one of my lines of business, I'm running a division in an ad agency, a Uniworld Group, built an HR and diversity consulting practice. And that too is built from 0 to 7 figures in 2 years. And we look to be at that same 7 figure mark by Q1 of 2025 for the Entertainment Football Association. So one of the things, the reason I emphasize that is, if you're looking at somebody who you want to either partner with or invest in a startup, particularly the founder, you have to ask the fundamental question: has that person done the impossible before? Have they built it to 7 figures? And fortunately for me, more that I've been around the block, I've done it multiple times, and hopefully a few more times as well. And if you don't have that founder that's built that practice to 7 figures, are there other individuals in that management team that have? Because the question I raise for any investor is, what makes you think that person is going to be able to do it? The the base numbers just very much against any founder or startup making it to 7 figures. And 7 figures, of course, is a venture growth capital market. It's very important. If you're looking for a fast growth enterprise, you better make sure you have somebody that's gotten to that level before.
Well said. And speaking of experience, could you speak a little bit about the team that you built, who's helping, or your co-founders and your fellow teammates helping build this company?
Yeah, it's a fantastic team. I think we have at least 150, 200 years of experience. It's a phenomenal group of individuals who are just great operators, great at what they do, and they get along well together. It starts with our chief teams operator, Tommy Benizio. For those who are not familiar, Tommy is a true guru in not only indoor football, but in kind of the minor league sports. He's the first builder of any kind of indoor football league, the IFL, almost 30 plus years ago. He's built a business model of perfection, really, that you follow the science of Tommy's playbook. And the goal is to be profitable before a game's played. And the reason is you have to understand your business model, which is while it is business to consumer, it starts with business to business, it starts with sponsorships. Football events are not as much as baseball or hockey. In our league, we have 5 home games in the summertime. So to really drive your revenue base, you have to be a very good sales or B2B sales sponsorship organization locally. And if you do that well, and you manage your budgets well, which you should be able to with great expense management tools, then you should be profitable even before you add ticket sales, before you add merchandise, and before you add concessions. We also have Rita Lee as our chief entertainment officer. Rita's a 24-year vet. I was done tours and worked with everybody from Drake to Ye, and really is a guru around. I call her Mini Live Nations. She's just an extraordinary operator and a brilliant guru in the entertainment space, and gets us access to talent at the best possible market rates and at the best timing when others can't. We have our chief merchandise officer, Brad Norris Jones, who is just another extraordinary person who's run 4 sports teams based out of Canada, has been in the merch business for 37 years. In his last stop in the Canadian Premier League, he sold close to $500,000 in merch for that team, which is more than the other 6 teams in the league combined. So, we have Elisa Giamo, our EVP and Chief Operations Officer, PhD, who not only runs the operations infrastructure for this business, but also our consulting business in other areas. So those are just examples of truly best in class leaders, best in class operators, and the ability to bring in those kind of high quality leaders are substantial difference makers for our organization.
What economic impact does the league have in the cities where it's located?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So when we launched our first team on April 4th, we hold a press event, and not mention that our commissioner is an NFL Hall of Famer by the name of Andre Reed. Andre is a 4-time Super Bowl participant, 7-time Pro Bowler, wide receiver for the Buffalo Bills, and he came on board in March. And so when we launch our teams with big press events, which we did in our first team in a place called Danbury, Connecticut, about an hour and 15 minutes outside of New York, it's a big deal. The mayor is part of our press conference group, economic development leader, president of the Chamber of Commerce, state legislators, because sports, if done well, is a powerful unifier of communities. It brings communities together, it engages communities, it gives youth an outlet that is positive, that is uplifting. It offers role models. We look to be a role model organization and have role model individuals. We look to role model effectively. We look to outreach effectively through our players and our coaches and through staff and leadership, through myself and others. And we look to bring economic value. Every one of our games, when you're bringing a few thousand people, you're not just bringing a few thousand people locally, you might be bringing 20, 30% from outside the region. So you're adding all these new participants really to the economy, in this case, Danbury, that wouldn't ordinarily be there, who are placing dollars in the economy, maybe looking at Danbury and their businesses as a place to invest or as a place to live. And then, of course, we want to outreach to diverse suppliers. So in any way, shape, fashion that we can utilize diverse suppliers in our supply chain. They are our number one vendor partner that we look to in local communities.
Interesting. And so what insights or responsibilities do you feel as a successful entrepreneur when it comes to impacting or inspiring other entrepreneurs that are kind of like seeing your story or learning about what you're working on?
Yeah, the overall umbrella is to get even the entertainment football association up and running is something called Freeman Labs. It's based on years as a management consultant and really the ability to drive substantial ROI in a short period of time, in three years or less. So really aggressive acceleration. Most seed level or early stage ventures are anticipated to generate value 5 to 7 years out. We're trying to cut that time in half. And one of the things we're trying to do is not just apply the tools from our learnings to the Entertainment Football Association, but we're really studying over the next couple of years what are efficiency models so that we can get particularly local businesses accelerated, incubated, fast paced, and positioned really for strategic acquisition, whether they're the acquirer or whether they're being acquired. Similarly, in a 3 year period of time, whatever type of businesses, and how do we get businesses that may not understand the infrastructure models necessary for scaling? How do we get them positioned to potentially not just be a business in the community, but be a business powerhouse regionally, nationally, and even globally?
And you have multiple exits under your belt. What was it that was attractive to, I guess, the acquirers of your past businesses? And are you trying to pass on those qualities, or have these new businesses that you're talking about implement those same strategies and models?
That's great. That's a great question. Certainly, you have to have a great business model. You got to do what you say what you do. So if you have a great business model, have you executed on the plan? Have you implemented the plan? Have you done so effectively? If you're not cash flow positive, do you know when you will be? Unfortunately, the business I've been with, typically in a very short period of time, they're cash flow positive, they're profitable. So that's very attractive for acquirers to see that you can move to profitability in a faster clip than your competitors. Do you have tools of sustainability? So are your people going to be around? Are your customers going to be around? Is your product set relevant? And do you have means by which to keep it relevant for the long haul? So all of those elements that meet up the term of sustainability, and then of course are the leadership team, the quality of the leadership team. Oftentimes, that's the first metric that acquirers will look at. Who do you have in that team? Are they best in class? Are they able to drive substantial value? And are they collaborative in their efforts to do so?
And what are your plans for, I guess, exit?
Yeah, we have sort of two tracks for exit. One is a traditional track. We want to scale. The magic number in US sports is about 30 teams. So 30 by 30, 30 teams by 2030 is the goal. And we believe in our cash flowing models that we can make it in 2030, 2030, 31. And that's, as we all know, a 5 to 7 year time frame. So that's right in the focal areas for any investor considering making an investor at this stage. For us, we believe that the model will attract acquirers quite soon. We think it will probably attract acquirers sooner rather than later, and sooner being probably a 12-month to 15-month period. We suspect some entity or entities will probably want to acquire outright if it's aligned to their business in general. But for us, in terms of controlling the exit, we see the IPO exit as the most viable, and we see it as the most constructive because we do have a plan to expand globally, and we've already begun talking to global investors and partner. We started in the UK, talking to major family offices there about the prospects of bringing our sport to the UK and Europe as early as 2027. So that controlled exit would enable us to have the capital and the branding and a whole host of other avenues that an IPO can generate to start really global expansion, with the UK and Europe being the number one target.
And could you go into a little bit more about the global expansion? So how did you settle on the UK as the next region of choice?
So a lot of this is based on to the credit of the NFL and even college sports. The brands of those sports over time have certainly created natural, really pent up demand for American football. We have to make that distinction as you go overseas. American gridiron football with versus what the markets are consider football, which is what we consider soccer. So American gridiron football demand has grown substantially. A lot of that having to do with the NFL playing in the UK and most recently Germany's. For those of you who don't know, and Tom Brady played, I think at Bayern Munich Stadium. There were 75,000 seats available. About 8 million people tried to get those seats. So the demand for this style of football is extremely high in many parts of Europe, in Germany, Spain, Italy, the UK in particular. The demand is very high. And of course, there are not enough NFL games or teams to satisfy that demand. So we feel that in our business model, we're able to set up with these great players, many of whom are either former NFL players or great D1, typically college players that will resonate with those marketplaces and can fill up, in that case, really large stadium. Places like O2 Arena in London would be an example of a stadium we play at overseas.
What are your thoughts on Ice Cube's Big Three league?
Yeah, I really watched, I think, a couple weekends ago, some of Ice Cube's work. I always love to see innovators like Ice Cube and others bringing sports and different styles of sports to the table. I think that I like the idea that there was a centralized model, and once things were up and running, franchising became an option. I think we may see ourselves in a similar route. We want to have everything running nice and smoothly, but it is a different business model. And so everyone knows most sports business models are built around the uh, growth of the value of your franchise, right? So Ice Cube has sold franchises, first in LA and I think Houston and another location at about $10 million each. And people buy into that with the goal and you get more sponsorship and media rights and more fan participation locally, that franchise grows to 20, 30, 50 million, $100 million in value. Unfortunately, for some of those franchises, that doesn't mean you have profit connected to it. So oftentimes they're very painful financial years um, to get those values up higher. So there may be functionally owners subsidizing those teams for 5, 6, 7 years to get to the point where the franchise value merits a sale and you can recoup those dollars. So that's sort of the calculation many sports franchise owners are making. Our model is fundamentally different. We have the good blessings of it all starts with labor and the cost of labor. Our labor cost input, I get reminded by Tommy Denizio, our chief teams officer, that basically, the NFL brings in 90 signed NFL players to every training camp to 32 locations. So well over 3,000 players and only 53 make it, plus a few more in the practice squad. So there's well over 1,000 NFL signed players who won't play. And so that, it's if you know your basic economics, supply and demand, there's just a glut of world-class talent. And when that happens, you don't have many buyers. Then the buyers have a buyer's market and the cost goes down for that talent dramatically. It's just the nature of supply and demand. And it's just a lack of jobs in the marketplace. So if you can provide jobs, you have functionally a great opportunity. What that means from an investor perspective is you basically have an expense line that's controllable and maintained at a pretty consistent rate for 10, 15, 20 years, because that model of having a lot of talent never changes. So if you know that your expense line is solid for many years, then it's up to you to get those revenues up. And if you know that you're selling locally to, you need to get 50, 60 sponsors in at 5 to 10,000 each, you can have a very solid profitable. And then you add ticket holders, 1,500 tickets a game and $50 a ticket. When you have a concert and a game, that's a pretty reasonable price point. So you start to realize that you can have quite a profitable set of teams out the gate generating value and yet still accrue franchise value. We've been approached by two operators of major hockey and major baseball, not major league, but the AAA level and the farm teams who have asked us if we would even consider franchising. And the only reason they'd ask is they see value in our model.
So speaking of the value that they see, could you speak on your thoughts on the future of sports and entertainment, where things are going, and how your company is aligned with that traction?
Yeah, the number one thing is a fusion of sports and entertainment. We, saw that with Taylor Swift and Jason Kelsey. And I'm a Jets season ticket holder. I was actually at a game the Jets played the Kansas City Chiefs, and it was like a Super Bowl atmosphere. 3 hours before the game, every seat in the tailgating lot filled. It was an experience for a regular season game that, just doesn't happen. And that kind of excitement, we've seen that even with maybe not as well known folks in the Canadian Football League. 50 Cent opened for one of the Canadian teams, and 55,000 people, 54,000 people showed up, the highest number in 40 years for that organization. So that synergy, we call it 1+1 = 10, that synergy of sports and entertainment, not the two individually, the two alone, is a major, major macro movement that will continue all around the world. And we're looking to capitalize it on everything we do. So that's one of the big trends. And another big trend is the branding piece and the ability to integrate big brands or the social media, celebrity, athletes, entertainers into your entire experience. And that's one of the things we do. We have a Hall of Fame commissioner. We have all of his, Hall of Fame buddies and entertainers and the like that come along with him. And with our chief entertainment officer, we have wonderful entertainers who have huge social media followings, and and then you have gamers, you have all sorts of reality show stars, actors. All of these people are infused in the mix. So I call it the new content is a jambalaya content. And that content attracts a lot of different eyeballs in ways that aren't traditionally possible. And then looking towards content, there's a war for sports content, for content that draws eyeballs. Sports is one of the few really left content models or an event model. People will huddle together and come together in groups as in communities to watch that event. The NFL has probably got, I think, 93 of the top 100 shows in the past year were NFL games, right? And you see the growth of the NHL, for example, their playoffs at an all-time. You see the WNBA growth, the extraordinary growth in eyeballs there. So compelling sporting events, which we believe ours falls in that line with all the star power that we'll bring to bear. People, even though it'll be Danbury, Massachusetts against Fitchburg, or Danbury, Connecticut against Fitchburg, Massachusetts. But if you have DJ Khaled as a headliner there are people who are going to watch, right? Taylor Dane or Kenny Chesney. People are going to watch that game because it makes it more, one of the big gamers is involved. People are going to watch. So it's that jambalaya content of attracting eyeballs that will be a powerful tool and continue the trend of sports being a very valued commodity. So the next piece is, what are streamers, what are typical broadcast TV, what are they going to invest in? Sports content that attracts eyeballs, right? And then what are investors going to invest in? And the two hottest investment categories right now are tech, in particular AI, and sports and entertainment. Those are the two categories that investors are pouring tons and all sorts, family offices, VC, angel investors, friends and family, they're all pouring money in those two areas, AI and sports and entertainment. So for those of you who are considering this area, you are in one of the top two investment tracks on the planet.
Douglas, thank you so much for stopping by and sharing your story and interesting insights about the industry and about the successful businesses you built and are currently building.
Thank you so much, Tony, and thank you to your audience. Have a great day. Bye-bye.